Hello guys, this is Paladin Cult, and this is the first episode of my Call of Duty Vanguard historical weapon guides. In this series, I plan to give some historical context to the weapons of Call of Duty Vanguard, as well as give some historically probable loadouts for each weapon in-game. In this episode, we will take a look at the STG-44, one of the first assault rifles you can use as soon as you unlock to create the class in multiplayer. The STG-44 is an assault rifle from Nazi Germany, and as such is often considered by most military historians as the first ever standard issue assault rifle used in substantial numbers, albeit a little bit too late for Germany during the war. What made this rifle special compared to the other guns used during the war was its intermediate cartridge, known as the 8mm Kurz or 7.92 by 33mm. It shortened the length of a standard rifle round, making it more suitable for sustained automatic fire while still being controllable, allowing individual soldiers to create a reasonable output or volume of fire while maintaining some form of accuracy on target. The STG-44, or the Sturmgewehr 44, which means assault rifle model 1944, was actually first produced in small numbers in late 1942 by the famous German gun designer Hugo Schmisser, who was well known for inventing the first submachine gun ever used in combat in World War I, that being the MP-18. The Sturmgewehr 44 was an evolution of a set of rifles created by Hugo Schmisser at the request of the German soldiers fighting in the Eastern Front. The men wanted a rifle that had a full auto capability of their machine guns like the MG34 and MG42, the stopping power of rifles like the Kar 98, but also the lightweight of a submachine gun like the MP40. Several prototypes were created, but the most well-known prototype that led into the rifle we know today was the MKB-42H, which means Machine Carbine Model 1942, the H standing for the C.G. Haenel weapons manufacturer that created the gun. The weapon was first used on the Eastern Front with positive reviews from the men on the front line. Requests for the mass production of the rifle were made, but unfortunately, Adolf Hitler did not see the potential of the rifle and was more interested in creating more bolt-action rifles and submachine guns for the Wehrmacht. Despite not having the Führer's blessing, the German army nevertheless continued to work on the rifle, naming it the MP-43 or Machine Pistol Model 1943 to disguise the weapon as a submachine gun. In 1944, after hearing his generals talk about the new rifle, Hitler finally saw the potential with the new weapon, and thus decided to give it a new, terrifying name that will strike fear into the hearts of the enemies of Germany. He renamed the rifle the Sturmgewehr, or the assault rifle. Unfortunately for the Germans, which is fortunate for the rest of the world, the mass production of the STG-44 was too little too late to make an impact in the war, and only 420,000 rifles were ever produced. Not bad for a late war weapon, but if you compare that to the over 5 million M1 Garands produced by the United States and the approximately 6 million Papa Shahs made by the Soviet Union, the Germans never stood a chance. Nevertheless, the rifle was well received by those who wielded it, and it paved the way to the development of future assault rifles such as the AK-47, which some conspiracy theorists still believe is an exact copy of the STG-44, despite Kalashnikov rejecting those claims. In Call of Duty Vanguard, the weapon is a solid mid-ranged weapon, and often considered as the weapon for tryhards and noobs. In this video, we will try to create a loadout that will keep the weapon's historically aesthetic look, while at the same time make use of the attachments that will make it somewhat usable in Vanguard's multiplayer. Some liberties will be made, but overall, the end result will make their gun at least historically probable. For our loadout for the STG-44, we're gonna first start off with the base gun itself. Now, as it looks, the gun already has its normal, historically accurate weapon model. However, to make this gun more usable in multiplayer, because of course not everyone is going to be running a standard naked STG 44, you may want to put some attachments to make the gun more competitive. Now, if you want to keep this, if you still want to keep the same model, I can recommend at least putting on the attachments such as the ammo type, proficiency, and kit. For ammo type, I normally use frangible rounds, but I would also recommend using lengthened rounds if you want to have a bit of an advantage against snipers. For now, I'm going to put frangible here. You can use any ammo type here if you want, by the way, but for me, I personally use frangible. Next, of course, for proficiency, you can put any of these if you want. I normally use vital for increased area for critical hits. And for kit, I normally run fully loaded because I'm always somebody who wants to have as much ammo as possible. And just like that, this gun can already be used in game, albeit not as well as the other guns in the game, but at least it's still usable. If you want to change the attachments but still make the gun look more historically accurate or probable in a way, here is the recommended attachments I would give. For the muzzle, I would use the T1 flash hider. Now in real life, the STG never had a muzzle brake, but this flash hider is actually making use of another gun's flash hider, the FG42. Okay? This of course will allow us to have some form of recoil control and even muzzle flash concealment at the expense of aim down sight speed. For the underbarrel, normally I do not recommend any of these underbarrels except for the hand stop. Of all of the underbarrel attachments, this is the most minimal looking one and you don't even notice it as much. Okay? For magazine and barrel, we'll keep them the same because if you change them, there's nothing that will make it look historically accurate. These do not belong to the STG whatsoever, and neither do these barrels. So we'll skip those. For the rear grip, you can use any of these attachments. I normally go for the Pine Tar for more recoil control. And for the stock, I would only recommend the VD. If you want to keep it at least historically probable, I would only recommend the VDD34S weighted. It's a bit different from the normal stock, but it still follows the same shape and design. Finally, for optics, if you're not used to the standard iron sights, you can go for upgraded iron sights with the Krausnik ISO 1M. This, compared to the other one, which is the 2M, has a wider field of view on the rear sight. You can use either of these two. I just prefer to use the ISO 1M. But if you want to use other optical attachments, I can recommend two more. The first one, of course, is the ZF4 3.5 times scope. In real life, the STG-44 was able to mount this kind of scope. However, in the game, unfortunately, when you mount a scope on an STG-44, it takes out the front sight, which of course doesn't make it historically accurate anymore, but it still is a bit probable. Another attachment you can put on the STG-44 is the Mark 12 Night Vision, which of course turns the gun into the Vampyr version. There were some prototype STG-44s that were capable of using night vision Vampyr scopes, and this I believe is the closest one we can get to that variant. So those are my recommended loadouts. Again, this does not make it fully historically accurate, but at least it makes it historically probable, and still keeps the aesthetic look of the historical Sturmgewehr 44. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the Call of Duty Vanguard weapon guide video. I plan to make more of these things in the future, probably once per week depending on my schedule, but I won't make any promises. Okay? Now, before I continue, or before I end the video, I would like to point out that I will only do weapon guides on weapons that were actually used in the war. Prototype weapons like the Welgun, AS-44, and Cooper Carbine will not be featured in this series because historically speaking, these guns were never used in combat in large numbers. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one and have a great day.